Hey folks, today we're just going to look at some old tech magazines from the 80s. So this is a magazine called Online Today, and it's was about connecting, and it was put out by a company called CompuServe, which was back then an online service. So this is from March 1985, and got another one from April of 1985, and I can't tell you why. I've got two from almost the same time and just happened to be here. And I may have more of these somewhere, but these two just happen to be there. So I grab them, and I may not go through and do, page by page on these, but let's see what's in here a little bit. And I'll set the stage as we go rather than have a long intro. So again, 1985, and I know from what YouTube tells me that basically almost no one listening to this was born or alive yet in 1985. So it's not going to be a world that you're going to know, that you're going to have direct familiarity with. But back then, nobody had the internet, really. It existed. The internet was around, but the web wasn't around yet. So the internet that it did exist was pretty much all text-based. But really wasn't available or wasn't common among the masses or in the mainstream. So very few people, had any exposure to the internet. If your parents were in university at this time, they may have had an account, because not even all schools were using it yet. And even within a school, it might only be something that they had, maybe for some of the tech majors, or like computer science or a science-based major. But so what people did instead of the internet, for the most part, those that were going to get online, they used these kind of devices, which you're probably going to see a bunch of ads for these things, because that's what everybody did, at least everybody that wanted to get online. You had one of these things, and it connected to your phone, and you've probably, seen mock-ups or something of these kind of ideas where all the modem noises, and they connect up on your telephone line. That's back when people had hardline telephone lines. And you would connect this thing to your computer, and you would get online that way. And you wouldn't get online to the internet. You would get online to some kind of a service, typically. So CompuServe was one of these kind of walled garden services. So where you would get in, and you could select areas that were basically communities. The best sort of modern example of something like that would be, say Reddit. So if you think about text-based Reddit, which I think when Reddit first started, it was all text-based. So you think of something like that. It's all text-based, and so sort of Reddit without videos or photos. And it kind of had groups. So many of the services that people would use back in this day would be a service like that. There was another thing that people would connect to, besides for these larger online services, would be BBSs, or bulletin board systems. And you may have heard that language used before, but these private bulletin boards were all over the place, and you'd have to know the number. It would be a specific phone number, and you'd dial into that phone number, and you'd make an account. And again, I'd say the modern kind of equivalent or closest thing that's similar would be, today what we pretty much call forums. And so again, it would be a forum that was text-based, so it didn't have photos and didn't have video. And at this time, this walled garden CompuServe, and there were a few others, but there weren't a lot. But the CompuServe was certainly one of the biggest. Hadn't even interconnected in any way to the internet yet in 1985. It was a few years later they started to create gateways to at least internet email, so you could exchange email with people on the internet. between somebody on CompuServe and somebody on the internet, and vice versa. So you could begin to have some interconnection between the public internet email and these private closed-off systems like CompuServe. And you didn't see that until a few years after this. That wasn't going on yet because there was really no driver for CompuServe to do that yet, because not that many people were really on the internet. No one even, for the most part, even knew what it was in the regular mainstream. It was probably 10 years before people really started to think about getting online in the mainstream, more like the mid-90s. So this is way back in the mid-80s. And I think the interesting thing are some of these ads, more as much as anything. But it's kind of a time capsule for what people were talking about back then in the tech universe. A lot of it is EasyPlex replaces email. There's something. CompuServe's new electronic mail program that's easy for novice users and flexible to expert users has replaced email, the former electronic mail program for CompuServe users. So it says to access it, type Go EasyPlex. So again, kind of thinking of Reddit, it's kind of a similar model. In this CompuServe world, you would go to these places and you typed Go, place name, and you'd be in that sort of area, which would be like a community where you could interact with content and in that space. And so it's, I guess, similar to a subreddit. And there were of course many of these areas on CompuServe. And then you learn these commands like this talks about. By using the upload command, you can now compose mail on a microcomputer and transfer it to the body of an EasyPlex message. By responding to simple prompts, you can transfer your letter or file directly into the EasyPlex area in a single step. So I guess this is saying you could compose a message offline, and then you could upload it. So if you didn't want to stay online to compose the thing because it was slow, you could potentially write your letter offline and then upload it. EasyPlex users can send electronic mail to other CompuServe subscribers by name rather than by user ID. Oh yeah, that was one thing about these. When you were on CompuServe in the early days, you were always some number, and it was always, I think the format was something like 5 digits, 4 digits or something like that. So everybody would talk about, maybe it was 5 digits and 2 digits or something like that, but everybody would talk about their user ID. It would be like, 56927.53 or something like that. And everybody would throw these numbers around like somebody's supposed to remember that and know what it is. But I do remember that you had a number on CompuServe. And they're talking about all the commands that you could use to access your messages. So you'd type these commands, choose read or receive commands. So you'd actually type the word read in there, and then it would prompt you maybe back with the second part of that or something like that. And you would that's how you spoke to these computers. You typed words, typed commands to them, and they would spit stuff back. So if you've ever used the, shell, the DOS command shell, I think it's called, or, obviously a Mac terminal, you sort of interacted with commands. But that's, on these systems, that was kind of the only way you could interact. They didn't have a mouse or a mouse interface or a graphic interface of any kind. You couldn't click anything. You just had a prompt and you would type stuff into it. And this was a big aspect of these early services, of course, is shopping, right? So they would always try to do deals with companies to create malls for shopping. And it never caught on to the degree something like an Amazon did, but it was certainly important for them to try to make that work, or try it anyway. I don't remember people doing a lot of online shopping, even though there was a lot of marketing money spent on trying to get people to do that. It just wasn't that convenient. I'm sure some people did it. And of course later, we did it a little bit more. There were forums you could go into and do sort of buy and sell. And here's a printer, so that was important things back in the day. You needed to print stuff out, right? So printers were an important thing. Does this thing have a price? Yeah, okay, so this printer was $1,995. And then you could get fonts for $99 each. So $2,000 in 1985 money for a printer, or at least for that printer. And here's a whole advertisement for diskettes. So if you've ever seen these things, most computers today don't have them anymore. They don't even have CDs in a lot of computers anymore, or DVDs. But before those types of media, there were these little diskettes. And before that, there were bigger diskettes, these big sort of vinyl floppy things. They called them floppies, literally. And here's a whole bunch of assortment of diskettes you could stock up on. And that's how you'd carry your content. And they didn't hold very much, right? So, I mean, as they got, in this era, these things were probably only holding a few hundred kbytes. So if you can imagine, like a typical photo today is way more than that, right? I mean, you could scale them back and get one photo down that size at a modest resolution. But, they had you'd have your whole file, not all your files, but a good chunk of files on there. Because it was text-based, you could put that much on there. But, if nowadays, like I say, one picture is more than those things held, more than the whole computer held in most cases. Usually quite a bit more. This is talking about an IBM PC XT back in the day, so those would have been big old desktop things. There's some products. Sidekick was a popular app. Man, it brings back some memories, all this software people used. Oh, I remember that book. This was a book called The Joy of Computer Communication. I know I had that book. I don't think I have a copy of that book anymore. Guide to Databases. Shopper's Guide. Here's another kind of time capsule of these companies. I don't think there's very many around anymore. New England Software. I kind of remember that name. I doubt they're around anymore. Some color photos of incisive guides, realistic accessories, issues and answers. Well, that's talking about this book itself. So I think I did see a picture in one of those ads of a Macintosh, which the Mac had come out at this time, but it was brand new. And, obviously more people. There's a Mac. There's an early Mac. You can see it there in that photo. So the Mac had come out, and the Mac, you can see, did have a mouse. And a graphic interface, but, that was the exception at this time. Let's see what's in this one. So it's going to be some similar types of things. Got your briefcase. There's looks like pretty much the same ad for a modem. I don't think this one lists the price of that modem, but I bet it was like $1,000 for that modem. They brag about the speeds. So this thing, 300 and 1200 BPS, so bits per second. So, if you think about a connection today, you're talking about mega bits per second and even gigabits per second. And this is 1200 bytes was bits per second was the fast one. And there's more of those floppy disks. That's what they looked like back in the day. Oh, and here's now they're bragging about 2400. So there's you're getting speedy now. Telecommuting projections. I like this one. Rush hour should be a breeze by 1990 if research projections hold true. It's one of those predictions that maybe 50 years too late or too early, because rush hour just continues to stay pretty challenging. I think with the COVID lockdowns, it was better for a while, but it's certainly back now to being quite a challenge. So whatever they thought was going to happen by 1990, it definitely didn't happen. Let's see. New York firm specializing in research, information services, and training in the emerging field of location-independent work predicts that nearly 10 million to 15 million individuals will turn into telecommuters, handing in their company parking passes in exchange for computer terminals installed in home offices. Why we haven't done it, I can't really fathom. It certainly makes sense to me, but we definitely haven't done it, and people still drive into their offices. There's been some change with the pandemic lockdowns, but now you see a lot of companies really complaining they want to get their people back into the offices, so I guess some habits you just can't change. This is talking about computing and the disabled. Some of the technology. In the long run, it will be up to the handicapped themselves to work with others in adapting and developing the hardware and software they need to achieve equal opportunities. And, I'm just echoing the language they used in 1985. Health services. Southern California winter. Video banking. CompuServe and Video Financial Services of Dallas, Texas have formed an agreement that will expand nationwide the home and small business market for video banking by personal computer users. The agreement will enable CompuServe's information service subscribers to conduct transactions electronically with banks linked through Video Financial's computer gateway. CompuServe is the first national computer network to offer this service. I don't know what video banking was when these computers didn't even have graphic video screens and certainly didn't have the bandwidth to transmit video. So I don't know exactly what that would have meant in this era. It would have been text-based, so I don't know why they would have called it video. CompuServe is replaced with a charge of $4.50 per hour while the subscriber is using the Video Financial system. After completing transactions, subscribers may log off or return to CompuServe's main menu. $4.50 per hour. More talk of the mall. So you had Buick in the auto shop, you had a book bazaar, Walden Books, Rodale Press, McGraw-Hill, Bantam Books, Financial Mart, you had MetLife, Maxwell, Select Info Exchange, Equitable Life, Newsstand, you had Magazine Entree, Ziff Davis, Merchandise Mart, you had Eastman Kodak, Sears and Roebuck, Automotive Service Contracts, and American Express Company. You can count how many of those companies still exist. Online, you had E.F. Hutton, Video Log Electronics, Harvard Business Review, Bank of America, the Record Emporium. So also this was a time of vinyl. CDs were about coming out at this time, but it would have been pretty new. But even then, you might have bought CDs from these same companies, Record World or RCA Record Clubs, Leisure Center, Magic Castle Video, American Outdoorsman, and the personal computer store. You had Misco, Sears, Commodore, Microsoft, Computer Express, Borland. Specialty boutique, you had Bloomingdale's, Hobbit Hole, Vita Menagerie, and American Express Shopping. Travel agency, you had Air France, American Airlines. Interesting. So that was what was available in the electronic mall back in the day. I kind of vaguely remember using some travel services online back then. But of course, we were kind of that rare group that was using the internet back then. But there wasn't anything on the internet like there is today, right? Primarily science related stuff. Science and research. So other researchers and tech folks. RockNet provides data for music enthusiasts. You can see that idea that you went into one of these, sort of like I say, the equivalent of a Reddit, a subreddit. So you would type go ROK to get into this RockNet thing. New products. Lotus 123, so that was the spreadsheet of the day. So this was before Excel. Excel in 85, I don't think Excel existed at all yet. But Lotus 123 was the market, was the dominant. In fact, kind of, I wouldn't say the only, but yeah, pretty much the main spreadsheet anybody uses, or used at that time. There's more ads for their electronic mall. These guys are going to tell you how to get the most out of CompuServe. David Payton and Charles Bowen, authors of How to Get the Most Out of CompuServe. Filing it online. If you're anything like me, you have plenty of files. The file space might hold longer files than your home software can handle, having a 128K limit. I mean, like I said, that's smaller than one photograph. I mean, you'd have to scale your photo down pretty small, low res, to get it down to 128K. Try that on your Mac or your PC sometime and see how far you have to scale it down to get it down to 128K. And that's the whole filing cabinet. And you can't even squish down one file to fit in that space. One photo, I should say. And here's a modem. See, this should have a price. So this is one of these new high-speed 2400 speed modems. And this guy is, $9.95. So $995 with auto dialings. Other versions available up to $1,695. At present, 2400 BPS is new to consumer microcomputing and hasn't spread widely. Many information services, bulletin boards, and the like haven't yet implemented the higher speed or stated what surcharge will be imposed on it. A lot of talk about a modem. Well, it's going to spend $1,000. I guess you got to talk about it a little while. Here's another one. This is a 1200, which would have been the sort of, heading out generation of speed. So it would have been common, but obviously, the next speed up was the up and coming thing. So this would have been almost obsolete at the time you bought it, but it was $495 for that one. Another one. This one's $549. And a device like that is what you needed to get online. And the computer you hooked it to was probably $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. This one's $499. What's this guy? Fast Talk Universal Data Systems. I think that's also... Oh, no, that's a modem. Another modem device. That's the thing under the telephone there. I guess that's what they're selling. Don't remember that brand. Again, here's that same ad for all those diskettes. This is where you'd save your information when your computer maxed out, right? You had to save it somewhere. It was all going to disappear when you unplugged the computer. I mean, when you shut off the computer. Different utilities and software you could buy for your PC. Symphony. I forget exactly what Symphony was. I remember the name. I think it looks like it was a competitor to Lotus 123, so another kind of spreadsheet type software. Here's a whole bunch of devices people might have been interested in that day. So you've got a television from that period. You've got a Walkman. It's a cassette based, so those were tapes. Probably never seen one of those. Some wine. Now that's we still have. I don't know what the other thing is. Here's a stove of the period. A camera. So this would not have been a digital camera. That would have been a 35mm camera. An old watch that actually looks pretty cool. It'd probably still be fairly stylish. Those kind of vintage old school styles are kind of in. A record player or turntable. Again, those have kind of come back. I think most of the new ones people are using USB though. That obviously would have been an analog device back in the day there. Okay, that looks like VCR. So yeah, I guess we had got VCRs by then, the big tapes. That's what I think that is anyway. And that's a video cam, so you can see that's how you record that. And you can see a cord coming out of it because that thing did not run on batteries. You had to connect that up, and it wasn't wireless. So you carried around a big battery pack, a camera like that. I guess that's luggage, sewing machine, boombox, and a microwave, and of course a PC. So that would have been an 80s era PC. And a Fiero. Yeah, you can get one of those too, apparently. That was a little two-seat car by Pontiac. It was kind of a piece of junk, but it kind of looked cool, a little sports car. Here's more high-tech gadgets. So you've got a PC, a weather station, a clock, ham radio gear, an audio spectrum analyzer, some kind of a microprocessor. I guess this is like a learning tool. Hero Robotics and robotics training. Interesting. It looks like it has a little robot arm. Stuff like an oscilloscope and other tech. Various other old tech. A secure modem. Not sure what that means exactly. It doesn't have a price listed. Or a lot of modem tech. And that kind of wraps up what we've got here. I guess this is, a mock-up idea of it, but I mean, this is kind of what this CompuServe interface kind of looked like. It would be like a menu like that. You'd pick something off this menu, or you'd say go something to jump to one of these CompuServe areas. Again, I'd say, something like Reddit subreddits are sort of a close approximation of what that worked like. Well, I hope you found this kind of flip through these time capsule magazines of the online world, what the online world looked like in 1985. No internet, no cell phones, at least not in the typical household. Oh, certainly cell phones, not anywhere, but internet would have been reserved for universities and some companies. And again, there wasn't much on the internet either then, because the web hadn't been invented yet, so everything was text-based. But I hope you found this little time capsule of the online world from 1985. That's some almost 40 years ago. Is that right? Wow. And thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon.